Welcome to Careers in Discovery, your window into the world of biotech leaders. On each episode, we interview the industry's leading executives to understand how they built their careers, what they've learned along the way, and the advice they'd give to their younger selves. In this episode of Careers in Discovery, Emma is with Jelena Aleksic, a serial entrepreneur, business coach, and director at SparkBio. Jelena has created 7 businesses in life sciences, tech, and even live entertainment, and we talked about her lessons from those startups. She talked about her transition from academia to entrepreneurship, the importance of testing ideas early with customers, and why stepping away from a company can sometimes be the right choice.
Welcome back to Careers in Discovery. Today I'm really excited to be joined by Jelena Aleksic, Director at SparkBio. Welcome, Jelena.
Hi, Emma. Thanks for having me.
So by talking about a little bit about the work that you're doing at the moment, but
Sure. So for the last 5 years, I've been a co-founder and CBO of Farm-Enabled Therapeutics, which is an AI drug discovery company for small molecule drugs. And basically, I joined when it was kind of 3 of us as co-founders, and ended up staying until we built it up to a company of kind of about 20 people. So it went from that sort of idea stage to a company that's established, has its own pipeline, and is VC backed. And then about 6 months ago, I had quite a big career change, which is that I left Farm-Enable and ended up diversifying my career a bit more. So at the moment, I'm doing a few different things. So one of them is I'm director at Signal Smith Audio, which is a software company. So that's a company that my husband and I are building up together that does algorithm development. And then I'm also director at SparkBio, where I do consulting in life sciences and have also recently started doing business coaching. So something
very
I'm
exciting.
yeah, so I'm really passionate about kind of supporting people, particularly building up small businesses at that sort of early stage. I find it really fun to kind of pull out what people are passionate about and kind of which direction they can go and how. So yeah, that's something I've been spending more time doing recently. It's been a lot of fun to kind of jump into different projects after being very kind of deeply into one project for quite a long period of time before this.
Yeah. And that's really topical for me, actually. I might be a bit greedy and pick your brains. Next week, I'm speaking at BIA at their Pulse event, which is set up for entrepreneurs that are in academia and they're looking to spin out. And I need to talk to them about how and when to build their business from a sort of hiring perspective and a recruitment perspective. So the work that you're doing with people sounds really similar, but probably more around the business strategy side of things.
Yeah, I love business strategy and the people side. I've been involved in building a number of different businesses over time. I originally kind of started my career in academia, and then I quit a postdoc to start a business. And I'm on my 7th business at the moment, and I've also been involved with I founded one charity. I've been involved as a trustee of another charity. So I love the kind of commercial side as well as the kind of social impact side of these things as well. So
yeah. So take me back to the beginning when you were looking at what to study. How did you decide that career in drug discovery and sciences was the way forward for you?
So I guess I didn't start off with the idea of drug discovery specifically. When I was at school, I had a really good biology teacher, and he got me very interested in genetics. So when I went to do my degree, I got really interested in this idea of kind of life and how life is built. And, I love this idea that there was this kind of underlying logic to all of life that ends up kind of creating all these different forms. And I still find that fascinating. So I did a degree in genetics, and I went on to do a PhD at Cambridge that was very much around that. So I was studying how fruit flies in early development develop their nervous system, and what are the kind of genetic signals that make that happen. So it's quite kind of theoretical research on, how is life built, how is the nervous system built, and which I still find that stuff fascinating. I absolutely love it. But another kind of motivation for me for going into science was that I think I always wanted to do something that's in some sense positive for society. So something that kind of contributes to humanity in some way. And going into research, I always thought, it's nice how science builds upon itself over time. So the way I think about it is that lots of people kind of contribute like different bricks, and you kind of build up these kind of amazing things over time. And it was interesting being on the kind of more theoretical side of that. But then when I finished my PhD, I was doing my first postdoc, and it was studying one particular rare disease, Dubowitz syndrome.
Okay.
So I was doing epitranscriptomics and looking at, we were looking at 3 patients because it's a rare disease. It's quite hard to find. It kind of got me interested in the rare disease community, and I found out a lot of the challenges that the people face. For example, it takes an average of 7 years to diagnose a rare disease in the UK, and you go through a lot of kind of misdiagnosis. And it just got me thinking that, I find the kind of discovery end of science really exciting, but then I really wanted to kind of see science translated and kind of get into the hands of patients. And that really kind of set me on this path of entrepreneurship rather than academic research, because I got excited about kind of actually taking the research and running with it and kind of seeing it out in the world.
And during your PhD, how much knowledge are you able to build up about industry within the framework? How much of it is very sort of individually driven by you to go and find what's out there?
So a PhD is nice because it gives you a lot of freedom. So I definitely had a lot of kind of freedom to learn and explore different things. And also it gives you a chance to find out what works and what doesn't work for you. So one of the things I found was, I started off a PhD that was very kind of molecular biology focused. So a lot of kind of pipetting colorless liquids into other colorless liquids. And I found out relatively quickly that I just found it really difficult to make that work. I don't know. It's a bit like with gardening. Like some people have like kind of green hands. So people talk about having kind of green hands in the lab, and I didn't. I wasn't a green hands in the lab person. So I ended up teaching myself to program for the first time in my life, and becoming a bioinformatician instead, because it just sat more naturally with me. So I think it's kind of nice that a PhD gives you an opportunity to try out different things. You have the space to learn different things and kind of see what fits you and doesn't fit you, as well as kind of experiencing the sort of science in practice and finding kind of novel bits of research that and novel bits of knowledge.
And kind of really narrowing down the options and crossing things off the list. It's important, isn't it?
Definitely. It's I think it's really important to do things that fit you to a certain extent. And it's so what I always try and follow is like, I always kind of go for like the next thing I'm a little bit curious about and kind of go in that direction, try it, see what happens. And like sometimes I love it, sometimes I don't. But I find, I don't know, I always think like we learn about ourselves in practice rather than in theory. Like something can seem really good. So one of the things I do as an entrepreneur is like I try out lots of different ideas just to see, like, I don't know. For example, once I was like, oh, social media, that's interesting. So like the way I try things out is like I try and sell something to someone. So like I sold a social media package to someone, tried doing it for 3 months, found it was an absolute nightmare to be a social media manager in my opinion, and then just never did it again. But it's just important to kind of
curious,
keep looking
try
for that
different things.
Keep looking for the fit. Because sometimes you come across things that you never would have thought fit for you, but they do for some reason. Like, I don't know, recently I've been studying more law because I got interested because I was doing a lot of contract review in my role. And I mean, if somebody had asked me, like at the age of 15 or whatever, oh, do you want to study law? Like, no, that sounds doesn't sound interesting. But actually, once you see some things in practice, often things can be fascinating once you kind of dig into them. And it's not always intuitive what fits us.
And at different points in our life, different things are going to fit at different times, aren't they?
Definitely, yeah. So I find it so important to kind of tap into that, both curiosity and also kind of that sense of like, what's right for me right now? Because sometimes, and part of that is knowing kind of what speaks to you right now, and part of that is sometimes even like letting go of ideas of who you used to be, because it might be that something fit you really well 10 years ago, but no longer fits you. So but it's something that like both for myself and also like in coaching, I love helping people find that sort of, because I feel like we all have that inner voice that's kind of telling us like, oh, this is the right thing, but often it might not be telling us what we want to hear. Like what we want to hear might be like, oh, I've been kind of working in this direction, but the inner voice might be going like, oh, there's something over there. And
I'm over here. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I suppose you talk a lot about self-limiting beliefs when you're talking about those topics with people as well.
Yeah, I think it's important not to kind of put ourselves in a box, and also to be
Yeah.
kind of willing to unlearn those boxes over time as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Talk me through, you mentioned sort of farm enable, but talk me
Mhm.
through your career steps from
Mhm.
after finishing your PhD and the pieces that have been most formative to you.
Mm. So, people often ask me about this kind of transition from academia to entrepreneurship. So
Yeah.
I'll tell you a bit about that because I think it might be kind of interest to your audience. So, while I was doing my PhD, I had a business as a kind of side business, which was nothing to do with science. It was fire performance business. So we had a live entertainment agency where we were doing kind of festivals and weddings and things like that. And in terms of kind of things that fit you that you didn't expect, one of the things I found from that was that I actually really enjoyed the business side of that. So I enjoyed doing the marketing, I enjoyed doing the negotiations. So finishing my PhD, I thought, like, I'd like to do something in the kind of business direction, and I was still exploring that. So then I had a second business, which was, I was doing a postdoc and I had a business on the side, and the second business was scientific writing. So I was
Okay.
helping
Yeah.
people write grants, scientific papers. It was quite kind of academic focused,
Yeah.
and I found there was a lot of need for it because a lot of people love doing the science but don't necessarily love doing the writing, which I really
Yeah.
enjoyed. And it was around that time that I came across this course called Enterprise Wise. I think it's now called Rising Wise, and it's Cambridge University course for women and encouraging women to be entrepreneurs. And it's run entirely by women, and it's for female students. And what they try and do is kind of flood you with different role models and kind of introduce you to
Yeah.
this idea of, entrepreneurship isn't this kind of monoculture. It's diverse, and kind of encourage people to see themselves more that way. And for
Yeah.
me, that definitely was a formative moment because I hadn't thought of myself as an entrepreneur up until that point. And once I did, a lot more of my life kind of made sense all of a sudden. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, I've
That's
always been doing
interesting that
this.
you'd set up the businesses but still hadn't
Yeah,
viewed yourself as being that.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. So, it is important how we identify because
Yeah.
uh, once I identified as an entrepreneur, I tapped into a lot of different kind of support services and networks that I wasn't tapping into previously because I didn't think of myself as a business person. I didn't think of what I was
Yeah.
doing, particularly from like a business side. I was just, I was doing a hobby that I was enjoying. Whereas once I kind of had that identity shift, then it enabled me to tap into a whole bunch of other resources that were always available, but I maybe didn't know that they were for me, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, so at that point, so I was doing my postdoc. Scientific writing was going well on the side, but it was I really wanted something that would be a scalable business. And so some colleagues and I started entering entrepreneurship kind of competitions. So there's a lot of these if you're attached to university. So there were kind of like student ones and kind of more
Yeah.
like nationwide ones. And what's nice about those is kind of you start with just whatever pops into your head in terms of ideas, but then like the more you kind of go through the process, the more it gets you to shape the idea.
Yeah.
And you might start off with something that's just like, oh yeah, wouldn't it be great if? But then by going through the process, at some point you end up with something that you go like, oh, okay, oh I think that could actually be a business, which is
Yeah.
yeah. So that's how I ended up starting Gene Advisor, which was this online marketplace for clinical genetic tests. The purpose of it was to speed up the diagnostics times for rare disease patients by
Okay.
giving doctors access to diagnostic tests earlier
Yeah.
in the healthcare pathways. So that ended up kind of starting off from these kind of student competitions and turning into a business. So I was the founder and CEO. Ended up kind of raising money for it. We had a team, we had a platform, and in the end, it ended up being owned by NHS UK. But
Wow.
in terms of the kind of transition point, it was interesting because often people don't quite know how to navigate that sort of, oh, I'm a postdoc, but I want to do something else.
Yeah.
So there was a period of time where I was building it up kind of on the side. So it was sort of on top of a full-time job. And then at some point, it was just getting a bit much and like I wanted to spend more time on it. So my co-founder and I both talk to our bosses. We were both postdocs at the time, and we both managed to kind of negotiate working 50% time as postdocs, and then doing the other 50% time on our business. So we were doing that for a while. And then things got busier, and then at one point, like we both left academia at the same time, and it was around the time that we got our first grant as a business. We were able to pay ourselves like a kind of minimal salary from then. But I love people can get really creative when it comes to this kind of early stage. So like I know one person who she built up her business by kind of moving her bed into the living room and then like renting out her bedroom to a lodger and that sort of thing. So just this kind of transition where you're kind of going away from a salary and kind of building up something. There's often like a gap that you need to be a little bit creative about feeling in one way or another.
And that there might be sacrifices to make in some areas of your life to be able to excel in others, and recognizing when the right time is to do that.
Our one was kind of as well as kind of working like alongside my kind of scientific research and then like kind of phasing that down. My husband and I ended up living in like an absolutely tiny place for 5 years while we did this. So we bought like a really small flat that we could like afford easily. And that was my kind of launching point for building my business. And it was very, it's nice to be in a bigger place.
Together as well though. And you work hard and...
and I also like how, I mean, I think building a business is always it's a team effort, including your family, even if they're not in the business. So like, I think like, if I hadn't had that kind of like support around me, it would have been much more challenging. But as it was, we're kind of very keen on making sure that we can chase our dreams, whatever they happen to be at any given time. And at the time, it was really important to me to be building my first business. So that was kind of, we looked at kind of, practically what do we need to do to make this happen? And
Is there anything else when you talk about when you and your partner in the business at the time decided to leave academia and go full time in the business? Were there any other elements that played part in that decision making?
I think it was a few different things at the same time. So firstly, we'd been doing a lot of market research for the business. We'd been doing a lot of market research for the business, and we got to a point where we thought we had a viable business model. And this actually started off from, like we were interested in rare diseases and helping diagnostics, and we were both bioinformaticians. So some of our early ideas were around, shall we make some software for analyzing the data and things like that. But then we went and kind of spoke to people who would be potential clients for that software. And basically what they said was, no, there's lots of software around. That's not a limiting factor. And we had this conversation with the head of the genetics lab at Addenbrooke's. So it's an NHS lab. And he said, what's really limiting for us is like, there's all these different labs that do different tests. It's hard to keep track of. They keep changing. They're all kind of specialists. And actually what would really help us is having like a single platform where we can find all the tests. And it just made us think, okay, like there's a gap in the market. It was well timed at the time because the the market was quite fragmented. So it was a good time to have a kind of unified online portal. So we thought, okay, the timing's right for this. And then we also got accepted onto Accelerate Cambridge, which is an accelerator, the Judge Business School. And they actually ended up giving us our first kind of business grant, which was 20K, which these small grants at an early stage of a business can make a massive difference. It's just that can be the difference between whether you can quit your job or not. So,
Thank you for sharing that. And how do you get in front of, so the market research was really important. When you're coming up with these ideas, how do you get in front of those people to be able to test whether your idea is viable or not?
So that's really important, and it's one of the big things that when I'm working with people to help them, develop their ideas, one of the things I encourage them to do is to think about who their customers are, and then get in front of those customers as fast as they can, because it's very easy to kind of, get excited about our own ideas, like in isolation. But I find, for me, the idea is just a starting point. So until the market says that it's a good idea, whether it's a good idea on paper, it really doesn't matter. The main thing is to kind of keep taking the steps to see whether it's viable or not. And also kind of asking the difficult questions around that, because sometimes like it's nice to work on the parts of our idea, just the branding looks nice, like I made a website, but like the thing that the thing that we all need to be doing if we're developing business ideas is who's the customer, like what does that customer look like, where can I talk to some of them? And
And that's how we challenge our ideas, isn't it? And that is important. And to think about the things that we haven't thought about.
And it's amazing how informative those conversations can be. So I tell people, like, even get in front of one customer, just see if they're going to buy, try and sell them something. If they buy it, great. If they don't buy it, like, ask them some questions and see what
Find out why.
they say. Yeah. And just kind of getting creative. Like, once you know what your customer looks like and who you're kind of looking to talk to, then getting creative about getting in front of those people, so you can, cold call them, cold email them, but also you can ask your existing network whether they know people like that, because it's amazing how sometimes like a friend of a friend will turn out to be like playing basketball with like the head of this lab, or but just kind of being resourceful about getting in front of those people, and then having those early conversations. People are often very open to giving advice. So you can say, like, I'm thinking of developing a business idea. Here's what I had in mind. I'd love to get some feedback on it. And that kind of early feedback can be really helpful for kind of starting to build relationships as well. So we had that from lab heads, from kind of different people in industry, from investors as well. So it's kind of that's starting to shape the idea and kind of figuring out what direction it could go in, and what direction you want to build it in.
And then you said that ultimately the business ended up within the NHS. How did you get it there?
So one of our investors, so Peter Cowley, who sadly passed away recently, called this an elegant failure, which was that the business didn't end up working out commercially. And the reason was, at the time we started it, the timing was good. It made sense because there was this kind of fragmented market with lots of different labs doing different specialties. What happened in a very short space of time was that a lot of hospitals ended up kind of bringing in their own DNA sequencers and doing a lot of things in-house. And also Genomics England popped into existence. It didn't exist back when we started doing this, and then they ended up doing a lot of that stuff in the UK. So we were looking at the numbers, and like the kind of platform was up and running, and we were trading in, I think, 18 different countries at one point. So we could see a bit of a drop off, and we investigated why it was, and it just didn't make sense to continue, and it didn't seem fair to our investors or like people who supported us to kind of keep pushing at something that we didn't think still had a viable business model. But then, because there was always a kind of social enterprise sort of motivation at the core of what we were doing, we looked at, we've built up this platform, it's up and running, it works well. How can we still kind of preserve some of the impact? So we ended up giving it to the NHS. So we closed down the company and gave away the platform, and they carried on running it for some period of time. I don't think it's still up and running, but it was a number of years ago now. And it was just a way to kind of respect, we had a team who put a lot of work into it. We had investors who backed us. There was this kind of whole set of people who'd all kind of invested time and energy into something, and we wanted to make sure that it continued having an impact.
Must be a hard decision to make, but an important decision to make at the right time.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was definitely a hard decision to make. We involved our investors a lot in that discussion. So it was something that, we were very open with the numbers. We had a workship where we invited everyone, and, everyone can come and have a say. And I think it's important to step away from things if they're not working, because I think it's almost the default is to kind of carry on with something up until you it definitely doesn't work.
Until it's forced. It's often the easiest route to not have to make a decision, isn't it?
Yeah, but at that point you end up kind of putting more time, energy, and resources from everyone into it. So for me, I think like I want to make a decision at the point where I have all the information, even if the decision is difficult. And this definitely was difficult, but But
and was everybody when you had the workshop? Was everybody of the same opinion?
So once we talked through the data and the reasoning, I think it was important to have the discussion and to have almost like a brainstorming, if people think that like we could kind of take it in different directions, or I think people had different ideas, but I think it was important to kind of go through that process, and in the end kind of reach the decision as well.
Yeah, and then everyone feels part of the decision, don't they?
Yeah, and I think it's really important to be transparent with people, particularly when things are going wrong. Like when things are going well, you can kind of get away with not communicating perfectly, but like when things are going wrong, I think it's really important to kind of not, again, like the impulse might be to kind of try and hide that a little bit until things are going a bit better, and that's a really bad idea, because if something's not going according to plan, like people need to know, your investors need to know, and like if decisions need to be made about that, they'll support you if they see that you've done the best you can, and if the rationale makes sense. So actually I ended up being kind of backed by the same investors again. So some of the kind of farm enable investors were the same people who backed Gene Advisor.
Fantastic. And that relationship and that trust in you
and
to make decisions.
And I think something that the US has a lot of, and that the UK is also kind of starting to appreciate, is having these experiences of sometimes failing and sometimes because I think you bring a lot of things from your previous businesses to your next businesses as well in terms of a skill set. So when I joined the kind of other team at Farm Enable, no longer the same role, so I was CEO, Gene Advisor, and I was CBO at Farm Enable. But we're part of the same community in Cambridge, and it's lovely how people kind of keep supporting each other
together. And how did you end up? Where did the ideas for Farm Enable come from?
So while I was running Gene Advisor, I did a lot of talks. I counted up. There was one year that I did like 72 talks that year. So I was talking at least once a week, sometimes multiple times a week. And during one of those talks, Hannah, who's the CEO of Farm Enable, came up to me after a talk and went, "Oh, that was really interesting. Do you want to go for coffee?" And I've somehow got this radar that like people tend to go for coffee with me at the point when they're thinking about starting a business. The business might not exist yet, but like it's I tend to kind of like attract people like that. We went for coffee and got on really well, and it just sounded like a really exciting idea. So it was already kind of like a built up idea by the time I joined. So Hannah is the CEO, and she was working with Natalia, the CSO, and they kind of built up this sort of platform for drug discovery based on their research in chemistry. And it was very much based around this idea of more three-dimensional molecules and the benefits of three-dimensionality for drug discovery and for kind of creating molecules that are more nature-like. So by the time I joined, my job was more to kind of help shape it into a story and work on the kind of business development side of things. And I ended up joining. So after we closed Gene Advisor, I did a bit of consulting for various people. It was fun to do kind of strategy consulting. Got involved with another kind of rare disease company for a bit, and then I ended up joining Hannah. And it's been really lovely to kind of see Farm Enable go from strength to strength and go through those changes as a company. Because again, starting from sort of a small number of people to having a team and a pipeline, and and the company's still doing really well. They're getting really good data from their program. So
really exciting. Then I suppose that leads us to today.
So I'm really enjoying kind of the diversity of different things I'm doing, and particularly the coaching I'm doing with people. I find really exciting. I thought I'd start doing a bit more of it because I've always done it. I've always mentored people, and I find it really exciting, kind of both seeing people build up their own businesses and also seeing what that does personally for people. Because there's something, people say that like business isn't personal, but it's super personal. It's just and I think it takes a lot of kind of personal growth to grow businesses, and like often people will kind of run into kind of various maybe unhealthy defaults or self-limiting beliefs or things that they need to overcome on the personal side in order to be effective in their business. And also conversely, I mean, seeing their business build up, and often for small businesses, it might be kind of building up financial independence, seeing a project come to life that you really care about. And I love what that can do for people in terms of, just like self-esteem and personal growth and living their best life. Because I really believe in kind of a very kind of strengths-based approach to what we do, and like finding things that fit us and building things that fit us. And I love supporting people in that. I'm neurodivergent myself. So I got an ADHD diagnosis last week at the tender age of 39.
Wow, really?
And I've been self-diagnosed autistic for a long time. But like one of the things that I love is kind of supporting other people, particularly other kind of neurodivergent folks, in finding careers that tap into like our passions and our
Superpowers.
strengths, and yeah, absolutely. So
Yeah.
and
I have
something
a
that's
son with ADHD and autism, and we talk about superpowers a lot.
yeah, so something that I something that's helped me a lot in my career is kind of going towards things that fit me more and more, and that really like fit my
Yeah.
interests and that I can hook into, and there are certain things that I just if I find it inherently interesting, like I'll work 10 times as fast as other people. If I don't find it interesting, I'll work about 100 times as slowly. But yeah, so kind of finding that fit is particularly important, and I love the
Yeah.
kind of avenues that small business offers for that, and like I think entrepreneurship is like this kind of really human urge. So I love kind of seeing that. It's almost like the world sometimes kind of discourages us from that, but like if you can kind of tap into that again, like kids are just like absolutely natural entrepreneurs. They see opportunities and they're just like, jump. But yeah, for adults, it's just like sometimes you need a bit of encouragement. Like, yeah.
We rely so heavily on the risk benefit thing as adults, don't we? Whereas children do just jump straight in.
Yeah, so yeah, I love seeing kind of I love seeing that come to life in people and what it can do for people, and also yeah, kind of creating alternative career paths and supporting people in that is something that I'm really passionate about. And I think yeah, for discovery and for life sciences, there's just so much exciting stuff out there, and it's not all in academic research. A lot of it is kind of out in the world, building different things and kind of taking, in discovery, taking things to clinical trials, taking things to patients, and it's really cool to see your research, go through those stages and kind of come out into the world and be benefiting people. So that's something that's really exciting.
Absolutely. What lessons would you say your career has taught you?
I think something I've touched on a few times is the importance of fit. That it's a lot easier doing something that you're strong in, but also like at the same time like encouraging people to be quite experimental with that, because often you can't tell if something fits you unless you try it, and sometimes things that might not sound like they fit you might actually be great for you. So I kind of really believe in this kind of looking for a good fit, but in a really kind of practical, iterative sort of way. So sometimes I coach people through kind of career transitions, and I encourage them to kind of go through the first steps of whatever the next thing would be. So if somebody's kind of considering like, oh, I want to do scientific writing or a PhD, I kind of tend to go, okay, great, like apply for both, like see how the applications go, and often you'll learn something in the process. If the interviews for scientific writing didn't like sit well with you, maybe that's not the right thing for you, or if they were great, maybe go in that direction. But definitely trying a diversity of things out in practice, and then just kind of seeing what sticks. So, yeah, a very entrepreneurial approach to fit. But I think that's really important. And the other thing is just it's so important to have a strong support network and take care of yourself and your mental health while you're doing this stuff, because it can be a lot. So yeah, having a supportive family has been really important, but also I have a great gym community. So I'm a competitive powerlifter, and I spend a lot of time in the gym, and it's honestly I'd be a different person if I didn't have that, because I can kind of, even if I'm stressed during the day, I can go and do a heavy session, and then I'm just so relaxed afterwards.
Like a bird after.
Honestly, it's we call it like the gym spa, because like I'll go and lift something really heavy and then just go. But yeah, finding those things. So finding things that kind of energize you, replenish you, help you relax, and making sure that you incorporate those things into your life, and not as an afterthought, but the like really kind of building them in, because we all encounter stresses day to day. We all encounter difficulties, and like having ways that you can reliably reset and take care of yourself is really important.
Yeah. And it's easy to think that when you're setting up a business, the more hours I do, the more successful I'm going to be. But I don't know about you, but definitely for me, I do my best thinking when I'm away from my desk, when I'm in the car or when I'm in the gym. And that's when I can be more creative, when my brain stops trying to be creative.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like the busier you get and the more stressed you get, the more it compromises your ability to think clearly. Because if you're just running from one thing to another, so I try not to do too many things. It's hard because it's easy to get excited about things, but I try and kind of limit how many things I'm working on at any given time to make sure that I give my brain that space, because I feel like that's when I do my best work.
Yeah. So if you were to give, I always ask this question at the end, if you were to give your younger self one piece of advice, we talked a lot about sort of lessons and trying things.
Mhm.
What would be the one piece of advice you'd give to the younger Jelena?
Well, okay. Like, firstly, I got diagnosed with ADHD at the age of 39. So, like, I think at the time I was growing up, we didn't know a lot about neurodivergence, and like, if we
Yeah.
had, it would have been really helpful to know that stuff.
Yeah.
But also just
Do you think it would have shaped if you had had a diagnosis? And I know it's
mhm,
easy and to look back in
mhm.
hindsight, but do you think it would have shifted your career path? Do you think it would have changed?
I don't think it would have done, but I might have had a bit
Yeah.
more sympathy for myself when I was struggling with certain things. I
Yeah.
think it would have helped with that. But it's tricky because like a diagnosis is one thing, but I think something that's really helpful right now is that we have fantastic like neurodivergent kind of neuroaffirming communities. So I
Yes.
think it's much easier
Yeah.
nowadays to be kind of really proud of those
Yeah.
labels, which at the
And
time
to
I was
feel
growing up,
part of something when
yeah.
you are often made to feel quite different. Yeah.
Yeah, and kind of seeing other people with the same kind of some of the same challenges, but also some of the same strengths, and kind of really
Yeah.
clicking with those people, and like that's something that didn't exist then, but did exist now that I think is really valuable. But I think just I think my one piece of advice would have been to kind of go have a bit more sympathy for myself over time. That
Yeah.
like I think the way I got
Be
through a lot of
kinder
things
to
is by going,
yourself.
yeah, because like by going really hard on myself, and actually it would have been nice to just be like, okay, like I'm doing my best, it's okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think I think my main advice to my younger self would be to be a bit kinder to myself. Yeah,
Yeah.
that
That's
and
good.
try
You
powerlifting
can
20 years earlier, but
Oh
yeah.
yeah. And that's good though, because you can still take that advice into your future. And now that
Absolutely.
you do have your diagnosis and more understanding, you can take that in and be kinder in situations.
Yeah, and I think whether or not we have a kind of particular label to attach to that, I think that's something that kind of everyone could do with um, just yeah, bit more sympathy towards ourselves because sometimes we can kind of give
Yeah.
that to other people, but not ourselves, and it's actually sometimes it's important to be like, okay, well, it's fine, you're doing your best, it's okay. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
um, yeah.
So what's next? What do you think the next year will have in store for you?
So on the business side, so yeah, my husband and I have been building up Signal Smith Audio, which is it's a software company. We do audio effects, so things like kind of auto tune for singing, pitch shifting for guitars, that sort of thing, and that's been really fun because it's not an industry that I'm familiar with. It's my first time in
Yeah.
the music industry, but a lot of the lessons transfer over. So I just did my first licensing deal last week for this company, and
Oh,
previously I was doing
congratulations.
thank you.
Yeah.
We're really happy about it. But
That's
yeah,
so
so
exciting.
previously I was doing licensing for like small molecule drugs, and now it's
Yeah.
licensing for algorithms. But like fundamentally, it's the same kind of. If you look at the contracts, I mean, a lot of the
Yeah.
considerations are similar. So yeah, we're really excited to kind of build that up because for us, it gives us a lot of kind of flexibility and work-life
Yeah.
balance and time to spend with our kid and
Yeah.
and then really excited to be doing more coaching as well, so
Yeah.
with people kind of both from life sciences and outside, but just kind of working with people who maybe kind of have an idea that they're working on, or like they have a business up and running but they want to kind of improve some aspects of it or scale it, or
Yeah.
going through a big career transition and kind of figuring out what to do next, because I
Yeah.
think I really enjoy this process of tapping into what people kind of care about and trying to kind of tap into that inner voice,
Yes.
and try and kind of hear that. Yeah.
Yeah. And giving them some headspace to see more clearly, just talking through the ideas with
Mm.
somebody really helps, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So sometimes the value is just you kind of put aside a time and have a kind of sounding board, and
Yeah.
I love the sessions where you kind of scribble lots of things on bits of paper and kind of have different kind of options all laid out, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I'm really excited for you, for both of your businesses, and see how they transform over the next year. Thank you very much for sharing your story with us, Jelena.
Thanks very much for having me.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, please like and subscribe and share it with someone else you think will benefit. And for more podcasts, videos, blogs and insights, come follow me, Tom Froggatt, on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram Medium, or TikTok. See you next time.